And I turn the computer on and it's just like, what is internet? I don't know what internet is. What is this internet thing? Yeah. And then there's everything's automated now, right? So I text Comcast, little automated thing, and it's like, no, there's no outage. And I'm like, yeah, there is. And I ended up calling them, and they're like, oh, yeah, um, there's an outage. Really? I didn't know. Anyway, welcome everybody. This is Shane Gripes About the World. How are you all? I hope you all are doing well. Welcome to the stream. I'm not always this grouchy. It's been a really long day, and that was like the uh, the little turd cherry on top of the crap sundae, right? Hope everybody's doing well. Nix, thank you so much for the sub prior to me getting on stream. I appreciate your support. Thank you for being Spartacus. Vipers, man, it was so hard to try to come up with what I considered like a tastefully appropriate pun for the title of this stream. It's like, how do you make a pun about, 3,500 people getting killed by people that have religious intolerance? There's not a fun pun to make for that. There's not really a good way to to turn that frown upside down or anything. So we went with Eire Incognita, which I thought was close enough of a pun to make. Hopefully, we'll be able to cheer you up. Yeah, let's talk about people murdering each other. Um, it's going to be an interesting stream, one way or the other. You wouldn't have stressed about it. The Irish aren't exactly known for their lack of humor. Well, yeah. Um, I thought about several times actually just posting whole lyrics from Zombie by the Cranberries and just posting the lyrics as the title. But I don't know. I feel like that wouldn't have been very much of a pun. That would be more of a direct ripoff. So, did the cane site come in useful? It did. I so I have this problem, and it's sort of an addiction, where I'm addicted to maps, and I I got really involved with that, and I got really kind of sucked into the portal of it, and then I was like, I need to stop. um, it's a pretty interesting site. So let me share this actually here in in chat. Vipers shared with me a really great website that's got a lot of where was that? Uh, Here we go. So there's a lot of stuff that's in here, and specifically this particular. Hmm. Now I'm looking at it again, and I'm like, no, no, don't look at this. No, don't look at this again. I'm so addicted to maps. I'm sorry. I'll straighten up, and I'll be a good boy, and I won't stare at this in the middle of stream anymore. Um, anyway, um, fiddly dee. Okay, stopping. Anyway, there's a whole bunch of stuff on there. There's a lot of like eyewitness accounts and people talking about stuff that they lived through. There's a lot of really good statistics. If you have there's a program called ArcGIS, which is basically a really fancy mapping tool that I wish that I had, but it was it's really really expensive. There are actually downloadable packs that you can use to like make interactive maps for this stuff. It's a really great site, and so I guess I should start at the top. The blah, 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 blah. I'm so flustered today. The stream itself today is about the Troubles, which was a period of time variously dated somewhere from either the 1600s all the way up to the early 2000s, or from 1916 to 1998. There's a lot of different ways that we can look at this, but basically what's going on here is Ireland is having trouble, and that is sort of an understatement, specifically dealing with the fact that Ireland is one island but two nations. And we can see here the border that separates the country of Northern Ireland from the other country of Ireland. And where does this come from, and why was it created, and how does this play out? And in the process of trying to put this together, I ran into a really big problem, and that is I kind of got too close. I am not a person that constantly sits around and thinks about, I have Irish heritage. I have Irish heritage. It's not something that I do. But I'm aware of my Irish heritage, and I have some fairly distant cousins that I don't speak with very much at all that live in Ireland and that lived during this period of time. I know that we've got Vipers in the chat here who has lived through this directly himself, and I found myself producing just this massive research and just like pages and pages and pages of outline that I wanted to get through, and it's just too much stuff. And it's such a sad story, and it really didn't have to happen. And I'm getting kind of like, I don't know, misty? Something might be flying around here. There's a lot of dust in the air. I need to clean up. Anyway, it's a sad story, and I had to, just for the sake of time, cut back a lot of stuff and give like a kind of a bird's eye view of the whole thing. But I really do encourage you to click on that link. There's a lot of firsthand experience that you can find there and get a lot more information about this. And what I'm doing tonight is a very brief summary, and it doesn't necessarily do the whole thing very much justice. And that's partially because when I do these things, I build these outlines, and they're usually like 2 or 2.5 pages long. And by the time I was done doing research to this, I had like 7 pages, and I was like, that's 2.5 streams. So I've got to shrink that a bit. So where do we actually start when we're talking about the troubles in Ireland? And we have to start pretty far back in time. Mostly we start with asking the question of why England thinks that they own Ireland. And this actually goes all the way back to like the time of the Vikings, right? And we can't clearly go all the way back that far in time, but the original claim of England owning Ireland goes back to the original Viking raids and some of the claims there. A lot of the cities in Ireland, like Dublin itself, was founded as a Viking camp. If we follow through with the Normans, of course, they're basically just one generation removed Vikings. They're going to claim claim Ireland when they take over England, and this is going to continue various points through the medieval period and then the Renaissance period, and it's really going to start actually kind of becoming formalized, where we'll pick up very briefly in 1494. And what happens in 1494 is this thing called Poyning's Law. Let me put that down to 2. And basically this is a British Act of Parliament that puts the territory in Ireland firmly under the control of the king, and specifically here the King of England. And this is sort of like formalizing informal claims. And it's important to note here that the Irish didn't really have any sort of say whatsoever in this. It was just the British basically saying, this is our territory. And this is going to continue throughout the 1500s to be a sticking point. Specifically, when we get to the Tudor family, Henry VII is going to basically decide that Ireland needs to be a kingdom of its own, and decides that he should be the king of it. So Ireland is made into a kingdom, and then he becomes king of Ireland. So he's king of England and king of Ireland. The Tudors are going to continue until we start getting a lot of activity, specifically under Elizabeth I. Now, Queen Lizzie, if you know who she is, she's this lady. This is Elizabeth I. She sort of decided that Ireland was basically the big backyard for England. And there had been some talk, even back in the mid-1500s, of basically divvying up the farmland of Ireland. And especially in the northern corner, where most of the Gaelic people lived in Ireland, this region was less densely populated, and a lot of people in England sort of thought this was like free real estate, right? Don't worry about all of those other people. We'll be able to, just kind of move in and take over. And that starts a little bit under Elizabeth, but the guy that really starts kicking it and getting it going is James the Sixth/First. So James the Sixth of Scotland, or James the First of England, and he is this guy, he of the large pantaloons. Those are enormous pantaloons. He doesn't look very happy. He's a Stuart, by the way. He's not a Tudor. But you know how things go. Anyway, so James is going to start something that becomes pretty important to our overall story here. And it's called the Plantation of Ulster. You wouldn't be either if you had to wear those. I know. I would be very, very hot. I don't, like, if I wear pants most of the time because nobody wants to see my pasty white shins. But if I had to wear that, I'd be probably unhappy too. But what is the Plantation of Ulster? Well, there was some fighting. There's actually a war where the British decide that they're going to take over Ireland. And specifically here, the Irish basically lose a lot. This is called the 9 Years' War. They lose a lot of territory. And a lot of the nobles in Ireland that had been on the losing side were sort of afraid of what James was going to do to them, so they ran away. And James basically stole all of their land. And it's called them traitors and treasonous. And they were his subjects, even though, they were basically just his subjects because he said so. But all of this northern population is going to get pushed around during a period of time that's called the Plantation of Ulster. And if we look at the map here of Northern Ireland, what we're looking at are the various counties of the north. And if you see here, 1609, so this actually starts a little bit earlier. It starts in about 1606. But over the course of those few years, this region here in the north is basically going to be taken over by Scottish and English nobles. And the native Irish are going to get pushed around and pushed out. And especially James the First, and then later under James II as well, there are going to be a lot of anti-Gaelic laws. These are going to basically restrict the movement of Gaelic people in this region, and they're going to restrict the ability of these people to basically practice their native culture. So when the British come over, they're going to be bringing with them Protestantism. And a lot of people, the vast majority of people in Ireland at that time were Catholic. There's going to be a lot of laws that get put into place that limit what you can do as a Catholic. There's going to be some attempt at sort of stamping out the native Gaelic language. And of course, the biggest issue here is that the land is going to be basically ripped out from under their feet. Hey, Ishmaelite, good to see you. Yeah, very unhappy with the tailor for James. The Irish are not going to take this very well, as you might expect. They view this as a destruction of their sovereignty. They see this as a really big slap in the face. And it's eventually going to boil over. Now, the Stuarts were sort of generally bad kings in the first place, and the Stuarts are going to get themselves in a lot of trouble, especially monetary trouble, and there's going to be a whole bunch of just poor leadership across the board in the Stuart houses. Everyone knows Protestants have more money. That's from Dairy Girls. Oh, my lovely wife has made me tea because I didn't have time to make tea before I got on stream. Give me just a second. I'm going to go get some tea. Be right back. My wife is awesome. Finally, tea that's hot on stream. Yeah, I know. Hey, late bloomer, good to see you. So this plantation of Ulster thing is not going to go very well. The Irish aren't going to like it. When the Stuarts end up getting kicked out, well, they run into the problem of another guy, and this guy's name is Oliver Cromwell. There's a whole war in England between Cromwell and the Stuarts. This guy here is good old-fashioned Ollie Cromwell. Of course, this ends with the kings basically being kicked out, and the Cromwellians, or the Roundheads, whatever you want to call them, are going to end up setting up a kingless system, and Cromwell is going to be style himself as Lord Protector of England. But Ireland decides that this is time to push back. And Cromwell actually invades Ireland. He brings a pretty big army, and he beats the mess out of the Irish. And it's not pretty, and it's very one-sided, and it does not go very well for the Irish at all. He is going to win the war, put down the rebellion, and he starts passing a lot of laws that are going to be generally referred to as the penal laws. So in penalty for the Irish rebelling, these laws are going to be established to punish them. To put the scale of those petty conflicts in perspective, Northern Ireland currently doesn't have a sitting government, partly over disagreement with the Irish Language Act, which the British Unionists don't want. Yes, so there's a lot of infighting. And when I want to talk about like everything. I want to talk about everything. And I'm actually trying to talk kind of fast so that I don't end up on streaming tonight until 10:30 or so in the evening. But the penal laws that are put into place in 1650 are really, really, really bad. For example, land gets directly confiscated from Catholics. If you break the law, one of the things that can happen is you get put in jail and they seize your land as punishment. And specifically, that land would then revert to the crown, which is going to end up being, the government. And basically, this is a way to redistribute Irish land to British or Scottish nobles. There's going to be an attempt to end the use of Gaelic as a language. They're going to encourage everybody to use English, and they're going to actually start passing laws that make it harder to use Gaelic. And specifically here, they're going to pass laws that make you lose, how do I say that the right way? To be in the Parliament of Ireland, you had to be Protestant by law. If you were a Catholic, you could not run for parliamentary representation, regardless of where you were in Ireland. So this is it's a big crippling set of penalties that was designed to punish all of Ireland and keep them under British control and limit the influence of the Catholic Church and the non-supporting Irish. So there were some people that had begun to sort of line up behind the British. Those especially were ones that had been able to hang on to their property. Some of the Irish nobility that had managed to sort of get in good with the system. And by this point, especially the people up in the north had been under indirect or direct British or Scottish control, thanks to the plantation, for almost 2 generations. So there were becoming people that, especially up in the north, that were going to just be more open to kind of lining up with the British, whereas most of the people in the south were still very much, if we looked at them as a population pie chart, mostly Catholic and mostly not in favor of British rule. And this is going to lead us to the 1700s, which are, and again, this is like super fast, and I can't spend all the time talking about this because I want to take most of the time tonight and talk about the actual period of time that is the Troubles. But this stuff is really important background because it all plays into the larger concept. And this is a conflict that started in the 1900s violently, but goes back hundreds of years, right? So, fast forward a little bit to the late 1700s, and we end up in 1798, and we get something that's called, if I can get all of my, there's so many little buttons and flippy doodah things here on OBS. Okay, here we go. I did make it, Tuna. The Society of United Irishmen. Oh, wow, that's really big. The Society of United Irishmen. Maybe I should put that down a row so that it gets a little bit bigger. Yeah, there we go. So the Society of United Irishmen is put together by 2 guys. Specifically, this guy here. Oops, sorry. Whose name is Samuel Nielsen, and this guy here, whose name is William Drennan. So Nielsen and Drennan are going to be the spearhead actors that put together the Society of United Irishmen. The pivotal point from this era is the Battle of the Boyne, which is celebrated by the Unionists every year, bonfires burning Irish symbols and effigies on the 11th of July, with parades on the 12th. Okay, thank you. I always love the context. That makes... I had to try to pick and choose things to talk about, and I guess I missed cultural stuff like that because I didn't actually know about that. So... William looks like a snack. I always thought that he looked a little bit like, shoot, I can't remember the guy's name that I'm trying to say it. I literally just thought it a minute ago. Poet from the 1800s. I got in a lot of trouble for flaunting his sexuality, and I can't say his name now. Words. Man, I'm really sort of, I'm scatterbrained right now. Shoot, I can't remember his name. What plays did here? Oscar Wilde. Thank you. Thank you. Gosh. Oscar Wilde. Thank you, Vipers. I'll just let Vipers take over from here. Go for it. I'll just sit here and drink my tea. All right. What is the Society of United Irishmen, and what is the deal? What is the point of this stuff? Well, the Society of United Irishmen were a group of people that were sort of fed up with the way that the British were running things. There was a lot of corruption. The number of people that were being blocked out of Parliament for being Catholic was getting to be too much. Even the people that were capable of still moving around because they had financial means were constricted because of the fact that there were all these other laws that were involved. If you weren't a part of the Church of Ireland, which was a Protestant church that was basically a carbon copy of the Church of England, so if you weren't a Protestant and a member of that, you had to pay tithes to that anyway. It's part of this, these laws that were passed where the Irish basically had to give their money either in cash or kind to the Church of Ireland, and this was just getting too much. So Drennan and Nielsen put together this group, and their goal was basically to form a united Ireland that would be able to stand up to England and force them to recognize Irish independence. It is not Irish tea. Don't feel too bad about the brain fart. You couldn't remember his name either, so you Googled the importance of being earnest. I was thinking Oscar Wilde today earlier, and I was like, that dude looks like Oscar Wilde. And then when I needed to say it, I couldn't say it. But the Society of United Irishmen is going to be one of the first attempts at creating a sort of pan-Irish group that was going to be willing to stand up and fight if Britain did not back down. And the Society of United Irishmen are going to begin the Irish Rebellion. Too many letters. Of 1798. So Irish Rebellion, 1798. Nielsen showing up, got his guys. Drennan showing up, got his guys. And they're going to go fight the British. They're going to try to stick it to the man, make Britain back down, tell them that they want to be independent, and it does not go very well at all. The English army shows up. They beat the mess out of the Irish once again, and the response to this is the Act of Union of 1800. And the Act of Union is going to put the Irish completely under the control of England, because they're going to say, well, you know, you're always part of the territory, but now you're part of the country, and you are now part of the larger United Kingdom. So the UK used to be Wales and Scotland and England and all of Ireland. This does not go well for the Irish. They had hoped for independence, and what they got was more domination. And as you might expect, many of them are going to be very upset. But there are going to be those who start trying to work sort of within the system to make things a little bit better, including this guy. This guy's name is Daniel O'Connell. He was an Irish lawyer, and he goes on to have a political career. O'Connell is a really important dude because he is going to be one of the first people that really starts showing that the way that the English code of law worked could be used against them. Because now that Ireland was part of the actual United Kingdom, that applied all of British common law to all of Ireland. Therefore, a lot of the ways that the Irish were being treated inside of Ireland was against British common law. And what O'Connell was going to start doing is using the British law code against the British Parliament. And they really, really don't like that. And he is going to use a lot of prowess to start forcing Parliament to pass laws that revoke previous penalties. For example, one of his biggest accomplishments was forcing Parliament to pass this thing called the Catholic Relief Act in 1829. And the Catholic Relief Act said that there could be no religious test to be in Parliament. So that meant that Catholics in Ireland could once again run for political representation. And the way that he sort of maneuvered this was, there are Catholics that are in Parliament in England and Catholics that are in Parliament from Scotland, but you're saying that Catholics can't be in Parliament from Ireland? That's some bullcrap. You got to fix this law. And he sort of bent Parliament's arm in London to force them to do this stuff. And that was his biggest accomplishment, but he is going to set an example on how to continue to use these sort of legal procedures to gain relief for the Irish people. This is going to also end up causing the end of that tithing stuff, right? Some roller derby commentators were discussing the derby phrase "eating the baby" last week, and it had you thinking about modest proposals. Yeah. What's up, Foggage? Did I say hey to Martest? Hey, Martest. Good to see you. Did I say Tuna? Hey, hey, Tuna. What's up, man? I didn't say hey to a lot of people. I'm being a bad host. Um, so O'Connell is a really important figure. Does a lot of cool stuff. And once the Catholic Relief Act gets passed in 1829, the next target is trying to force this support of the Church of Ireland to go away. This idea that you have to pay for the Church of Ireland even if you're Catholic. And this is going to start something that's called the Tithing War, which runs from 31 to 36, 1800s. And it's going to end up forcing the end of the tithing restrictions. Similar people are going to start bringing lawsuits against landowners, specifically landowners up in the north, for really horrible conditions and things like absenteeism. A lot of the land that was owned in the north by the Scottish or the English was land that they literally never went to. They were sort of over in England making money off of the land, and the people over in Ireland were working this land. And especially when things like the potato famine hit in the 1800s, mid 1800s, a lot of these people couldn't pay rent. And there was a lot of attempts at evicting these people, and Irish people said we should be able to go to court in Ireland. We shouldn't have to be forced to go all the way to England in order to defend ourselves against unfair rent practices and unfair evictions. And this is going to lead to more violence. It's a small-scale conflict, but it does cause a lot of trouble for the British, which is called the Land War, which runs from 1879 to 1882. Yes, the landowning class, indeed. So the Land War is going to be a really big thorn in the side of the British, who at that point had a lot bigger things to worry about, especially trying to take over Africa and hold on to Central Asia, which they ended up losing. Not at all relevant, you know. Yeah. But what this is going to end up doing is bringing a whole bunch of lawsuits and tying up the system again and sort of forcing the hands of Parliament once again into passing another law that's going to bring Irish relief. So this is what's called the Land Purchase Act. It's passed in 1903. And what this does is allows, it forcibly breaks up a lot of these really big absentee plantations up in the north. And it allows for people in Ireland to purchase the land if they have the money. Now, of course, this means that a lot of people are going to gobble it back up and keep the poor people right back on the poor, in the poorhouse. But it is at least Irish people that are living in Ireland that they can take to court in Ireland, that they have representation for in Ireland, instead of the pond being between them, and you having to go over to England to try to do anything. But it doesn't fall completely by the wayside. There's still a whole bunch of inequality up there. So, and there's also, by this point in Ireland, a growing inequality between land-owning Irish upper class and Northern Irish working class people who were some Protestants, but also substantially Catholic populations. The people that had closer ties with England were going to convert to Protestantism at a much higher rate. The people that were going to be more or less kind of the working class are going to be some Protestants, but also have a sizable Catholic population. You don't see very many Catholic landowners in Northern Ireland at that point. So my next viewer request is going to be overthrowing the ruling class, best practices from history. I don't know what I would do with that. So we have reached the early 1900s, and we're not completely past the bar yet. So we're doing okay. We're making all right time-wise. But the question of does Ireland get to be free starts coming up. And it had come up in the 1800s. Actually, William Gladstone, the Prime Minister of England had supported the idea of Irish Home Rule, basically returning Irish independence, governmentally speaking, and allow them to have an acting parliament that passed laws for themselves and ran themselves. And they would basically be at that part, more or less the way that Wales and Scotland kind of operate now, or even perhaps something that's more like the Commonwealth, maybe the way that Australia or Canada were operating at the time. So perhaps. What up, Cave Geek? Good to see you. 2-1, it's TOS and shut down. What's up, Noger? I could construct that in a way that would be TOS. I predict that if we overthrew the ruling class, we would simply become the new ruling class. Well, that's what Marx would say. Marx would say we need continual revolution because you need people that have not experienced the excess of luxury that creates greed and evil to constantly be the ones pushing for change. Gladstone became not popular in the upper class because of that. He came out not popular for a lot of reasons, but that was absolutely one of it. Overthrowing the ruling class, methods that have failed and other methods too. Right? Okay, so by the time we get to 1912, there is a third bill for Irish Home Rule, and it hits the Parliament of England, and it looks like it's going to pass. It looks like it's got enough support to pass, and they start talking about it, and they start doing some work on it, and then it does actually pass. But there's a pause here because World War I happens, and the bill passes to basically restore Irish Home Rule. And then World War I breaks out, and England is like, oh crap, no, we need the Irish. Specifically, we need all those Irish, soldiers so that we can go do the World War I thing, right? And they basically put Home Rule on pause. This does not make people in Ireland happy. Now, there were a lot of people, let's be clear, there were a lot of people that absolutely supported the British in World War I. There were a lot of fully Irish battalions and regiments and army people that went to fight very, very bravely during World War I. There were also people that were at home that had fought in World War I for a stint and come back. And there were some people that drilled and never went that were very upset that Home Rule sort of got paused. And this is when we're going to get some lines being drawn. Specifically here, we end up with the Ulster Volunteers and the Irish Volunteers. Now, all of these people are going to be Irish, right? They're all from Ireland. But specifically here, Ulster is going to refer to the people that were in Northern Ireland, that were loyal to the British, that wanted to maintain their ties with the United Kingdom, and the Irish were going to be people that were very much pushing for Ireland to be allowed to rule itself and break away from England altogether. How do you do, young Willie McBride? Do you mind if I sit here down by your graveside? Yeah. Yep. I promised myself I wouldn't break out singing Danny Boy tonight, so I'm not going to do it. But there we go. So the Irish and the Ulster Volunteers, these are both going to be sort of paramilitary groups in Ireland. The Ulster Volunteers are going to basically say we need to take up arms and support the British, and the Irish are going to say we need to take up arms to expel the British. And they have some pretty strong opinions about this, and this is going to begin a really rough period of time that doesn't end for another 80-something years. But World War I ends, and when that happens, the British start waffling on this whole Irish independence thing. And they're like, okay, well, maybe we, the Home Rule Bill was one thing, but maybe we could work out something where you kind of stay around. And there are a lot of people in Ireland that were just like, no. Not going to happen. This is not what we agreed to or what we want, and this is going to begin the Irish War of Independence. So many big words today. Lots of resizing the note frame here. I wonder if there's a way that I could get OBS to do that automatically. I don't know. So what we have here, the Irish War of Independence, it starts in 1916. It's that same old thing since 1916, right? And what we specifically have here is the first real use of what we might consider the Irish Republican Army. Now, the Irish Republican Army had existed during World War I as a group of Irish soldiers that had gone to fight for England during World War I. But the IRA in 1916 is not going to be supporting the British at all. These are going to be people that are going to push for Irish independence. The war goes from 1916 to 1922, and for the first time, the Irish are going to remarkably make their point to a substantial level that the British are not going to be able to say no. And part of this is because England had been beaten like a dog in World War I, and their population had not even had a chance to settle down, much less recover. Britain's population didn't get back to pre-World War I population levels until the 1980s. It took them 80 or 70 something years to recover population-wise. Of course, there's World War II thrown in the mix as well, but still, you get what I'm saying. This is a big issue, and the Irish are going to be willing to fight for their homeland. Now, there is a temporary a country that is called Ireland that is made during this period of time, and there's going to be a lot of rigmarole about what happens to this particular country, and basically this is a defining moment in the history of Ireland, because what England decided to do was recognize a country that was called the Irish Free State. And this would basically make them a country that was part of the larger Commonwealth. Let me catch up with chat. The area of Michael Collins, who had quite a career, Irish revolutionary soldier, politician, and Apollo 11 astronaut. There we go. Message you on Discord how to get the text to fit box size. Thanks, Nogar. I appreciate that, man. I know that there's a way to lock the size of this box. I wonder if that's it. Will that do it? No. There's a text box that you all can't see the borders for, and that's what I'm having to constantly resize right here. And even when I lock the box itself, it doesn't actually lock the borders. So I don't know. There's some fiddly little bit that's in OBS because OBS is a jerk. Anyway, and World War II didn't help the population very much. Exactly. So, at the end of the Irish War of Independence in 1922, England is going to decide to make Ireland a Commonwealth country with a catch. The counties that are in the north were going to be able to hold a special referendum to opt out of being part of the Irish Free State. So this was going to be basically just a pure majority wins vote. And as soon as England said, okay, we officially make Ireland a free state, Northern Ireland goes, we don't want to be part of that, and they voted and they stayed with the United Kingdom. And this is where the borders come from. So if we look at the map here, these counties in the north were the ones that decided that they were going to stay with the United Kingdom. And specifically here, a couple of cities like Derry and Belfast are going to be important cities that are going to be mentioned a lot in the next bit. So now the rest of Ireland here is going to be the Irish Free State. Did the UK push Northern Ireland much? There was some pro-British propaganda, but they didn't have to push a lot. And this is an important moment for us to sort of do some groundwork and lay down some kind of differences here. By this point, the majority of people that were living in the northern counties of Ireland were Protestants. And the majority of people living in the rest of Ireland were Catholics. And this was a really big deal. I know that today religious differences are still causing troubles across the world, but sometimes, especially in the United States or in what we might call Western countries, if you think about religious differences, it doesn't really mean that much, right? My religious beliefs and your religious beliefs might not be something that we want to go kill each other over. But at this particular period of time, and even still today, religion means a lot. And the religious differences that had propagated during the British occupation of Northern Ireland and the Scottish occupation of Northern Ireland had not only caused differences in cultures, but that had caused basically a class system to evolve, right? Where in many instances in Northern Ireland, if you were Catholic, you were very literally a second-class citizen, if you were a citizen at all. And there was a lot of cultural pressure against Catholic people in the North. There were a lot of restrictions that weren't overtly religiously based, but fell along religious divisions, right? And let's not forget that the majority of landowners in the North were Protestants. The majority of business owners in the North were Protestants. The majority of government officials in the North were Protestants. So this had become something bigger than just a difference between Catholic and Protestant. It had become a difference in those with power and those without power. And there really were significant cultural differences for a lot of the people. Now, this isn't to say that every single person that was a Protestant or every single person that was a Catholic in Northern Ireland hated each other, right? In a lot of ways, this was a conflict born out of the extremes. The people that were extremely powerful and the people that were extremely downtrodden were the ones that pushed a lot of the people in the middle towards the poles. So here, like we're talking about polarization, a lot of the loudest voices for Northern Ireland to be part of the larger Irish state were those that had been directly affected by maybe anti-Catholic sentiment or anti-Catholic laws. A lot of the people that were very pro-England were the ones that were benefiting from that stuff and were making a lot of money off of that. So just like in any conflict, not everybody hated everybody else. But because of the pervasive nature of this cultural difference, there really wasn't a lot of room for people to sit in the middle. There was a lot of sort of cultural gravity that pulled people towards one side or the other, and it was really hard to make it in the middle because you didn't have friends on either side. And it's not even to the bad part yet. Note, the reason it's called Derry/Londonderry is because the two factions refer to it by a different name, a demonstration of their political allegiances. Exactly. Derry Girls, have we seen it and enjoyed it? I have not seen it. I know it exists, but I have not seen it. I hear they all float down in Derry. That's a different Derry, and I think that one's in Maine. I thought the division almost entirely had to do with power and politics in England. So it did. Right, it did. But the power and the politics were held by the people that supported the British, or the English, right? And those people were the ones that had benefited from the alliance with England, but that started as cultural ties that went back to when the Protestants showed up in the first place during the plantation of Ulster back in the 1600s. So it's messy stuff. Now, as soon as the North decided to stay with the UK, a lot of people settled down. A lot of people thought, like, this is okay. Like, this is where we go. But some people didn't. Irish movie recommendation: Good Vibrations, the story of the grandfather of Irish punk Terry Hooley, who discovered Fergal Sharkey and the Undertones, Teenage Kids. Oh, cool. You meant that it was almost unentirely about religious differences or debating theology. So how to say this? The theological differences were important because they were the basis that a lot of people used to exercise political or social power against other people. Now, the goal of those doing oppression or doing rebellion was to get political power, but the line that was drawn between them started off being a religious line. And while they weren't sitting on the barricades debating whether or not the blood and the wine literally turned into the flesh and blood of Jesus, their heritage in those religious ideologies was very, very present. And if you look at where a lot of the meetings took place between some of these different factions that are going to start causing pretty horrible trouble for the other side, they meet at churches a lot. And some of the attacks happened as people were walking out of churches. So yes, the larger conflict was not a theological one, but it's so baked into the cake that you can't really take it out either, right? Religion is more of an identifier for political leanings, right? But you can't just say, like, how do I explain this the right way? Okay, here we go. If you look at a Venn diagram of people that were pro-England and anti-England, and you overlay that on a Venn diagram of people that were Catholic or Protestant, it's like 99%. So even though the question ultimately was, are we going to stay in England Dominion, or are we going to be in Irish Dominion, was a political one, this was being driven by differences that coincided with identifying religious beliefs that were very central to these individuals' concepts of identity, right? Oh man, I don't even know if I should get into that because that would be really rough. In a similar way today, if you look at people that are going to super duper support Trump, and you look at people that are going to super duper support Biden, or even the Republican and Democrat Party, and you look at the religious ideologies of America, everybody knows that a lot of the super big supporters of the Republican Party are evangelicals, right? They're evangelical Christians, they're Southern Baptists, they're prosperity gospel people. And while they don't vote against the Democrats purely for, Biden being Catholic, their religious ideology is going to inform their political action, right? They're going to support candidates that support them. And it's sort of, it's kind of a chicken and an egg thing, right? Like the Easter Rebellion, right? Finally, Shane is going through the struggle of how do I say this and it's not about Israel. It's a tough thing to explain, and that's why it's such a difficult problem, and one of the reasons why um, I had so many notes, because I wanted to go through like every single line of this and explain how every single domino just knocked over the next domino. Uh, but I realized that would take effectively forever to do. The prosperity gospel approach doesn't make sense to me yet. You don't understand it. Maybe history of prosperity gospel. I would totally do that as a stream. And yeah, there probably is enough to make that work. A lot of history of religion in that. Anyway, in 22, Britain decides, Ireland, you're a free state. North, you get to decide whether you're going to stick around or leave. And the North says, we're leaving, we're staying, we're leaving Ireland, we're staying with the UK, and this is where the boundary comes in. Most of the people are going to go, okay, cool, and they start settling down. That is not the case for the Irish Republican Army. The Irish Republican Army at that point is going to once again take up arms and immediately starts causing trouble. And this is going to start off as protests and marches, but it is going to eventually turn into shootings and vandalism. And what's going to end up happening is something that's called the Emergency Powers Act in 1926, where basically the entire chunk of Northern Ireland is put under what is effectively military rule. And this is going to introduce and super duper empower a really important group here. The Royal Ulster Constabulary. How about that? Just make the font a little bit smaller so I can type more in. Royal Ulster Constabulary, or the RUC. Now, they are designated by this sign here. So you have the good old harp, which is, kind of a traditional symbol of Ireland. You have the crown of England here. RUC, Royal Ulster Constabulary. Just occurred to me, you wonder if JFK being elected or even assassinated was inspirational and emboldened the Irish Republicans in the 60s. I don't know. That's a great question. I know that there was a lot of support for the Irish in Ireland from America. A lot of money left America in the early 1900s. JFK was a Democrat or Republican. When did those parties kind of flip? JFK was a Democrat, and those parties kind of flipped not too long after him, specifically after LBJ. So when JFK got shot, Lyndon Baines Johnson became the president, and they started passing laws that made civil rights work for black people. And at that point, a lot of people, especially Southern people, were like, Democrats aren't supposed to like white or black people. And that's when everybody that was basically racist decided to go vote for the other party. That happened. Party realignment. That's a good history stream that I could do. Anyway, yes, the boys in bottle green, RUC. So, with the North in a state of almost constant military upheaval or military rule, the RUC is going to be a political force, but, they're a police force, but they're also going to be peacekeeping troops, sort of patrollers that are going to, in many cases, be kind of Judge Dredd. They are the law. And if they tell you to go, you're supposed to go. And if they tell you to stay, you're supposed to stay. And this does not sit well with the IRA at all. You successfully fended off 2 tangents in a row, but that would make a great stream. I'm trying to stay on track tonight. We got a lot of stuff to cover. So the IRA on one side is going to be causing trouble and doing activities to try their best at convincing the British that Northern Ireland is not worth it, and convincing the people in Northern Ireland to cause so much trouble that they basically come back and line up with the rest of Ireland. IRA at this point is saying we need one Ireland. We don't need 2 Irelands. We need one Ireland. So they're specifically going to do a lot of work to try to help Catholic people that are in the north. Things are going to go a little bit squirrely and a little bit sideways in 1949. In 1949, Ireland votes to leave the Commonwealth, and they become a fully independent Irish country on their own with no more ties to England. This is going to make things worse. Why does it make things worse? Well, for many reasons. Notably, there were a lot of people in the north that wanted to be completely out from under the British. And as long as the Southern Irish were still part of the Commonwealth and kind of under the British, there really wasn't that big of a noticeable difference. Okay, Northern Ireland's in the UK, but the Southern Irish are, I mean, they're in the Commonwealth too, so, I mean, it's not really that big of a difference. Now there's a big difference. Now there's a Catholic government in the South that is trying to revive the Gaelic heritage. They're reinstituting teaching Gaelic in schools. They are sort of dusting off all of the old kind of Irish heritage stuff, and there are a lot of people in Northern Ireland that are now noticing how much they can't do in Northern Ireland that they could do if the North joined up with the South. And specifically, one of the things that they start noticing is that the Northern Irish Parliament was really badly gerrymandered. And the way that the district lines were drawn, it was drawn specifically to dilute the Catholic vote and basically to make certain that there weren't going to be anywhere close to a majority of Catholic Parliament members, if there were Catholic Parliament members at all. And they start seeing this stuff and they're like, holy crap. Like, how dare they learn things, right? Right, Moose? And this is going to push a lot of people into the arms of the IRA, because the IRA says, come down here. We've got free Ireland. We are independent. We can do our thing. We don't have to worry about England anymore. Come be part of us. We're all Irish. We're all the same. Come be with us. This is why it's a big deal. And this is going to step up. Schools are the place for children to learn things, right? Learning is learning. This is going to step up fighting. And over the course of the 50s, there's going to be a more frequent demonstration group. There's going to be a lot more marches. There's going to be a lot more attempt at doing strikes and walkouts for Catholic people. The RUC are going to become a bit more heavy-handed in some instances where the Protestants might be the ones sort of instigating the violence. They might kind of let it play out. But if the Catholics are the ones that are instigating the violence, the RUC is going to come in and literally beat them with sticks. This is going to start actually pushing those people towards the polls, right? Fun dinner fact, the UK is often abbreviated because it has the longest official name of any country, the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland. Yeah, well, I mean, school can be indoctrination. It doesn't have to be. Don't say Gaelic, Bill? Yeah, kind of, sort of. There had been several of those earlier, too, and I don't know if you were here when we talked about that, but there were already bills that had been passed by England that had tried to limit the use of Gaelic. And now that I'm thinking about it, that might have been actually... Well, I don't know. I don't want to cheapen the current political stance by making a pun out of it. It's really hard to make a title for this stream. Anyway, with the rise in violence and the rise in incident rates, the good old UVF is going to show back up again. Sorry, that's the break screen. UVF, Ulster Volunteer Force. This is in 1966. for God and Ulster. And here we see the red right hand. Title for this stream. It was really difficult making a title for this stream. Yeah, pretty much. Later on, the RUC/Unionist paramilitary links grew to full-on collusion. Correct. Especially in the 70s and 80s, that became really, really, really involved. And they basically had people that were members on both sides and would literally change clothes and go do stuff. So this is the banner here for the Ulster Volunteer Force. And they're formed in 66. And they're specifically going to say, we are here to do to the IRA what the IRA is doing to us. So they're literally formed as an opposing force for the IRA. And this is when things start escalating. There's going to be more marches. There's going to be more protests. The rallies are going to be met by counter rallies. There's going to be gang violence. There are going to be people that are forcing individuals to take sides. There's going to be targets on small businesses that are owned by Catholic people. And this is going to sort of come to a head in several series of riots, specifically Belfast riots in 1966, and then the really, really big one, the 1969 riots. The 1969 riots were really, really poor. They screwed up a lot of stuff. The RUC and the UVF sort of made their first tentative kind of alliance here. The IRA was the provocative mover in a lot of these particular instances, but this is going to start killing a lot of people. There are going to be shooting attacks. There are going to be bombings. There are going to be fire bombings, specifically of property. There are homes that are destroyed. There are businesses that are firebombed. There are entire streets where Catholic people live, where there are Protestant mobs that walk down the streets and throw rocks through the windows and then throw Molotov cocktails through the windows. This is when the bad stuff really starts hitting. It was bad before, but this is like the point where things sort of cross a threshold into a new level of real bad. It's going to get so bad that the British are going to send in the military. Don't worry, Margaret Thatcher will fix all of this. I'll show you the bomb hole that they blew up in the Brighton Hotel where they tried to kill her in just a bit. So the British Army gets sent in, and then they don't really leave forever. Well, not forever, but for the next 30 years, there's going to be a British Army presence inside the big cities like Derry, Belfast. And one of the things that starts happening is that they literally start building walls. So we're looking here at a map of Belfast, and you can see here that the Catholic areas are here in green, and that the orange areas are here were for the Protestants. And you can see these things that they call peace lines. These peace lines are literal walls that physically separated these areas from each other. And a lot of these are still there. You can still go see a lot of these today. So, physical peace walls designed to keep people apart from each other because it was harder to deal with policing these areas than it was to spend the money to build fencing and 10-foot tall security walls. Yeah, Vipers is hitting us with all of the data. UVF, UDA, yeah, Loyalist Volunteer, yeah. And the thing is, like, a lot of those groups didn't get along with each other. And even on the other side, the IRA had just recently gone through a split. So here's a badge of the IRA with the Phoenix, undefeated army, right? So the IRA is actually going to go through a split during this period of time too, because some people in the IRA thought, okay, what we need to do is kind of pivot to political tactics, and other people were like, no, we just need to kill everybody and get everybody so freaked out that they go away. And so there's even a split in the IRA. And you end up with the OIRA and the PIRA, and there's a whole bunch of those groups, and they don't even get along. And even a little bit later, there's going to be the INLA, which is the Irish National Liberation Army, and then there's even like these little sort of like these little groups of just commando murderers, like the Shankill Butchers, who are on Shankill Street, that randomly rounded up Catholics and tortured them and raped some people and then would slit their throats. Like, there's so many little, like IRA provision. There's the PRIRA, PIRA, continuity, IRLA, the new IRA, right? So there's all these little groups, and they don't agree on how to do a lot of stuff. And a lot of times the only thing that they agreed on was we need to kill the other side, or we need to blow up something, or we need to do this, or we need to do that. But anyway, this is when the troubles really are starting to hit. Shankill. So Shankill is a street. If we go back to our map here, you can see Shankill Road, which runs right here through Belfast. This was the sort of hideout of the Shankill Butchers. I don't know if that's where shank gets its stabby meaning from. It's possible, but I don't actually know if that's a direct correlation or not. Okay, so in the wake of the 1969 riots, the targets just get wider, right? RUC officers start getting targeted, civilian buildings get targeted, and the violence starts spilling out across the border. So it's not just all going on in Northern Ireland anymore. People like the UVF will do attacks against people in Dublin, and people that are in the IRA will do attacks against English people in England. And the boundaries don't really matter anymore. It's where can I find the bad guy and how can I hurt them? And this is going to start spiraling out really, really wide. And this is going to lead us to 1972 and an event called Bloody Sunday. So this is in January the 30th, 1972. There had been a really big planned march. The nationalists, these are the people that were trying to reunite Ireland, had planned a big march that was going to go through the middle of the cities, and the government had basically said no marches. Yeah, like the U2 song, right? So they had said no permits for marches. We're not going to do any marches. No marches. And the nationalists did it anyway. They started marching, and as they were walking, they passed some of these barricades where the British Army was posted, and they had started to throw rocks and stuff at them. And this was not something that was uncommon, right? The British military people that were in that area had started wearing like the full out like the military stuff, right? They were wearing like battle helmets and like body armor, and they were decked out, and them getting thrown or getting hit by throwing rocks or bottles or stuff like that happened all the time. So this particular instance wasn't necessarily like new, but there were some paratroopers that had been sent over that were up in a building that were sort of watching the crowd. And specifically, one of the things that the British soldiers would do that really freaked a lot of the Irish people out, and this was clearly something that they did on purpose, instead of using binoculars, they would watch people through the scopes of their rifles. Right? Um, so that, like as they're watching you, they're pointing a gun at you. And so they're up in this building and they weren't on the barricade. And some people noticed, like, hey, there's some people up there in that building, and they're in a civilian building, and they're pointing guns at us. So they started throwing stuff at them. And they started trying to agitate the people in this building. And what ends up happening is that the British soldiers opened fire on the crowd. And they shot 26 people, and 14 of them died. And this becomes like, it's a flashpoint. It's a really, really big flashpoint. And the IRA that had been doing bomb attacks already are going to just go bomb crazy. There are thousands of bomb attacks that start happening in the next few years. The British are going to respond by sending over more troops. How do you think that makes the conflict go? Right? It's adding fuel to the fire. And then the Northern Irish Parliament gets dissolved, and they get put under direct rule of London. And that makes even more people upset. And that even offended a lot of the people that were British supporters, because they were saying, like, well, you don't even think that we can run our own problems over here? And this is always sort of a constant refrain. Why can't Irish people solve Irish problems? Why do we need England involved with Irish problems? There were a lot of people on both sides that started asking that question around this time. Like, if it was just Northern Ireland talking to the Irish Free State, we could have had this figured out. The issue is that you've crammed England in the middle, right? So it's a messy situation here. For the rest of the 70s, and this is where I have to start sort of doing a bit of summary stuff, because I knew that I'd be running out of time by now, and I am. The British are going to start bringing in snipers. And one of the things that starts happening is sniper lists of people that they knew that were leaders in the IRA or in one of these various other nationalist groups. And the British are going to start setting up snipers' nests and picking these people off as they're walking around in the Irish or the Catholic areas. The IRA is going to ratchet up bombs like crazy. They're going to start targeting big and higher named people. For example, there's a British Prime Minister, a guy named Edward Heath. Heath had tried to work out a power sharing agreement between Northern Ireland and Ireland called the Sunningdale Agreement. And this is in 74 and 75, where basically they would form a council with some people from Northern Ireland and some people from Ireland, and they would work on what they might consider non-essential things like tourism or trade, stuff that wasn't necessarily directly political or violent. Not that trade and tourism can't be political, you know what I'm saying. It's just like, if we can start building working relationships on low tier types of stuff, maybe this can foster some goodwill between us, and we can spin this into bigger and better things in the future. And that ended up folding after about a year and a half or 2 years or so, because it was just too much. And then the IRA tried to blow up Edward Heath. They blew up his house. He was actually out at the time, and he came back home about 9 or 10 minutes after the bomb blew up. This is when you start seeing a lot of new, smaller groups like the Irish National Liberation Army. This is when the Shankill Butchers start running around. The IRA is going to start targeting really big people. They killed a guy named Eire, who was in the office of Margaret Thatcher. So by this point, Margaret Thatcher had become Prime Minister of England. Neve had been in the military before, had been doing some stuff in England before, and he had been appointed basically like the The particular term is called shadow minister. So he was the shadow Secretary of State for Northern Ireland. And this is sort of like a big fancy aide, basically. But he was killed in a bombing. Hey, Inferno, what's up? How's it going? We're having an okay time. We're talking about some pretty heavy stuff, but it's going pretty well, right? I hear 1975 and I think 20 years ago, and then look at the date and then do math. Yeah, it's pretty rough. Vipers, please do continue to add commentary if I'm missing something that's important. At this point, I am going to have to kind of speed through some stuff. So they kill one of the ministers, and then the IRA targets the royal family itself, and they kill Louis Mountbatten, who was... He's got like a bajillion titles. You all know how the British royal family has titles. But he was Queen Elizabeth's second cousin. And he and his mother-in-law and some of these other family members were out on a boat that the IRA blew up with a bomb. And that was a big deal because now they're killing British royal family members, right? Shadow Minister sounds like a legitimate job title that one might put on a resume, right? Yeah, it's pretty intense stuff, but we're doing okay. The 70s are going to wrap up with a lot of people dying and a lot of the violence increasing. By the time we get to the 80s, things had gone really, really far awry. And the IRA is going to start targeting members of parliament. They're going to start targeting former members of parliament, anybody that works in the government. At this point, they're basically just out for blood. Anybody that looks like they might have had anything to do with Irish politics is up for a target. And this is when they're going to target the Brighton Hotel. So during one of the IRA basically Kaiser says it. Yeah, kind of, sort of. During one of the Conservative Party planning sessions and campaigns, they're going to have their they're going to have their headquarters at the Brighton Hotel. And the IRA are going to find out where they are, and they're going to sneak in a gigantic fertilizer bomb. And when it blows up, this is the damage that it does. It's a big friggin' bomb, and it blows up a giant chunk of the building here. Margaret Thatcher was potentially one of the targets. She was not harmed. There were some Conservative Party members killed and a British member of Parliament killed. But this is serious stuff. I mean, it was serious beforehand, but now they're actually trying to kill the sitting Prime Minister. Fun fact, even though he was born to Irish parents, whenever John Lyndon went to Ireland to visit his family, he got bullied for having an English accent. Accents are part of that. It's part of that heritage. Ethno-linguistic nationalism is a big deal. I recently, was it last week or the week before? I can't remember. Maybe it was the week before. Within the last 2 weeks, my wife and I watched Belfast, the Kenneth Branagh movie. And one of the things they brings up there is if we go to England, are they going to understand us? And the Irish people are saying, no, you don't go to England because they can't understand you over there. Being understood when you speak is really important to identity. Now, the situation in the 80s is going to further increase because the problems that England was making across the world are going to create friends for the IRA. And if you were coming to the stream tonight thinking that you're going to talk about Ireland, you might not have thought that you were going to hear the name Muammar Gaddafi. But Muammar Gaddafi, at the time, was a dictator in Libya, and he had this idea that the British had killed one of his sons with a bomb, which is probably true, but I don't know. They deny stuff, but you know how it goes. So Gaddafi knows that the Irish are causing trouble for the English, and he goes, I hate England. So Muammar Gaddafi, who is a warlord in Libya, starts smuggling guns and supplies and money and explosives to the IRA. And if you didn't think things were bad, wait until we start adding like rocket-propelled grenades to the mix and land mines to the mix. It's bad. It gets real bad. And to combat this, some of the Ulster resistance reaches out to some of their friends in South Africa. And they're like, the IRA is getting heavy war material. Can you sneak us some up here? So now both sides in the 80s are going to end up with what we would call war materials, right? You know you're doing it wrong when the clown emperor of the Middle East is backing you. The Irish didn't care. They were willing to take whatever guns and bombs and tanks and guns and bombs that they were willing to give. It's so bad. A lot of the biggest attacks happened in the 80s. A lot of the attacks ramp up in frequency during the 80s, and a lot of the groups start fractioning a little bit as well. Small guess that the Ulster weren't reaching out to the black South Africans. That's not, yeah, you are correct in that guess. It's not just accent, it's context. I know a guy who went to Ireland/England rugby match in England. Ireland won, and on the way back home, he stopped at a gas station. He quipped to the attendant, "Good result for the Irish today, huh?" To which the attendant replied, "Get off the forecourt, you illegitimate child," as he was completely aware that he had been in IRA bombing during the match. Oh, wow. Yeah, that kind of stuff is crazy. And when we get to the end, I'll talk about some numbers, and the numbers are just bad. But a lot of the goals of these different groups start shifting, and because of the fractioning of power between both the Protestant and the Catholic sides, there are going to be a lot of people that start getting kind of fed up with the killing. And there are a lot of people that are going to start pushing for peace. There are a couple of people that are trying to bring peace to Ireland and Northern Ireland that win the Nobel Peace Prize around this time. What's up, Draw Bear? Good to see you. It's been a minute. Hope you're doing well. And by the end of the 80s and the early 90s, there is a small glimmer of potential hope. But things aren't done yet, because we're not done yet. The IRA launches mortars, right? Because now we've got war materials, right? We've got actual mortars. They shot mortars at number 10 Downing Street in 1991. That's where the Prime Minister lives, right? They tried to blow up the Prime Minister in his house. That's like somebody launching mortars at the White House, right? That's almost unthinkable, and yet it happened. And this is going to really start, like, this kind of stuff, and highly publicized deaths of people on both sides are really going to start pushing people to the idea that they've got to try to do something. And especially John Major, the guy that was the British Prime Minister at the time, really wants to try to find some peace. And the Irish and the British are going to work out the provisional points of a deal. This is called the Downing Street Declaration in 1993, where the UK government basically signaled that they would once again be open to basically make a provision that would allow Northern Ireland to once again hold a referendum on whether or not they wanted to stay in the UK. Now, here's the thing. One of the biggest fuels on the fire for the IRA was Northern Ireland can't come back. They made their decision way back in 26. I'm sorry, in 22. They made their decision way back in 22, and they can't unmake their decision, or they can't change their mind. There's no way to do that. England has to let them have a referendum. England has to give them the power to do that. But by this point, it had become pretty clear, even to a lot of people on the Irish side that were, in the IRA or the Catholic side of things, that most people in Northern Ireland didn't want to be part of Ireland. And it was probably a majority. But they kept fighting because they didn't know. They didn't know for sure. So the Downing Street Declaration in 93 says, okay, look, if one of your things is Northern Ireland can't decide for itself, we'll let Northern Ireland decide for itself. And we're fine with that. We will make an open declaration anytime they want to. If they want to vote to leave the UK, we'll let them do that. And that made a lot of people calm down. But it didn't make everybody calm down. But it does make enough of people calm down that there are beginning attempts at ceasefires. So there's an attempt in 94 to make a ceasefire, and most of the year of 1995 is a little bit of a slowdown, but it kicks back up. There's another attempt at a ceasefire in 96. There's another attempt at a ceasefire in 97. And none of these stick. But then there's a really important moment in 1998 that's called the Good Friday Agreement. So this particular one is signed April 10th, 1998. Here's a picture. We have British PM Tony Blair. We have the Irish Taoiseach, whose name is Bertie Ahern. They're signing Good Friday agreements. This particular set of agreements is actually multiple smaller agreements that are kind of all bundled into one. And this was the work of a lot of people and a lot of cooperation and good faith on both sides. And it was a lot of compromise. So, for example, both countries, England and Ireland, are going to admit publicly on the government level that Northern Ireland is a majority of people that want to be in the UK. And for the Irish government to recognize that was a big step. The UK, though, said, we're still open to letting them out. If at any point they want to get out, we will let them have a vote to get out. But until then, here we go. Another point bringing up, although not a big political thing, more on the ground, was that the paramilitary groups during this time enforced their will through punishment beatings and kneecappings. Do as they say or get maimed, which slowed down the peace process as some people were getting very wealthy from arms dealing and controlling the criminal underground. Well, dang. Yeah, that's crazy stuff. As part of the Good Friday agreements, the Irish Constitution is going to be changed to recognize Northern Ireland's legitimacy to exist. That was a big deal. There was a mutual agreement towards demilitarization. Specifically, the English said, we will take the military out. We're not going to take it all out immediately, but we will start phasing out the military. And as long as things remain peaceful, we will continue to phase out the military. They had been there since 1969. It's almost 30 years, right? So is this the conflict? So is this conflict also what Sinead O'Connor was alluding to when she tore up the photo of the Pope and said, "Fight the real enemy"? I think that was more about like the fact that the Catholic Church had like that was when the first round of like child abuse scandals had hit the Catholic Church. Nope, yeah. So the abuses of the Catholic Church. Yeah, there we go. And as part of the Good Friday agreements, Northern Ireland was going to get home rule back, so they were going to be able to get their local parliament sort of back up and running. Now, the Good Friday agreements in '98 stopped most of the big violence, but it did not stop all of it. Since that point, there have been about another 200 people killed in various attacks, but they became less organized and less frequent. But the tension is still very much there in a lot of people's lives because this was not something that happened outside of our lives, right? Like I was 15 in '98. I remember when this got signed. I remember watching the Cranberries talk about the song Zombie because a couple of teenagers in Northern Ireland got killed by the conflict here. And kind of crazy. Now, if we look at the numbers, I didn't want to spend like an hour talking about all of the numbers here, but I do want to mention some pretty dramatic ones. 3,500, so 3,500. Dun, 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 dun. That one Irish lad. Welcome to the adventure. Feel free to add to the conversation. I don't claim to know it all. I'm just trying to do justice to what happened and try to be as fair and balanced as possible. And when I say fair and balanced, I mean actual fair and balanced, not like certain news agencies that claim to be fair and balanced. But I do want to show you this particular map. And this came from that site that Vipers shared with us. And then I shared earlier in the chat. Let me see if I still have that. Yeah. Okay, so I allowed myself one map from the website here. And this is total death rates per thousand. And you can see over the course of 1969 to 2001, you can see where the population is going to be centered. And of course, this here is Belfast and here is Derry. And you can see that down here in the south, especially along the border with Southern Ireland, things tend to be a little bit more concentrated. But if we're just talking numbers, 3,532 people ended up dying in this conflict, according to the best records. Now, to put that in a bit of perspective, and let me say this very carefully so that everybody understands what I'm trying to say here. That was 3,532 people from basically 1969 until about 2001 is when the last sort of clearly identifiable IRA attack happened. But that was kind of the tail end, even that. Like the Good Friday agreements really did solve a lot of the problems and slow stuff down. You're super late because Stan Sakai was doing a live stream. Oh, cool. See, so there's the thing, Foggers. It doesn't sound like that many. Let's put this in perspective, though. If we look at the population of Northern Ireland at that time, and then we look at 3,532 people, 3,532 people would be equivalent to 2% of the Northern Irish population. So what would happen if 2% of Americans died? Right? Let me do my calculator out. So what would happen if 7,400,000 people died in the United States? Wouldn't that be a big deal? So if that many people died in Northern Ireland, even though it was across the period of almost 30 years, that's a big percentage of their population. The border between Northern Ireland and Ireland, where that lot of red was, is colloquially known as Bandit Country. Wow. You talk about right down here in this little corner. I don't know. 1 million Americans died 2 years, and it's apparently no big deal. If 7.4 million people died, Republicans would vote down COVID relief. I mean, I get the joke, but you also understand that this is a serious situation, and that the population is not the same that we have in the United States. And even though that's not a lot of people, that's still a lot of people for them. And this is going to disproportionately affect young people. There were hundreds of children killed. Most of the people that are going to end up getting killed are not most, a substantial portion, something like 40-something% of people that end up getting killed aren't even combatants. They're just people that were at the bar when the bomb blew up, or people that were at the church when the bomb blew up, or on the street when the bomb blew up. This isn't just combatant deaths. This is like people. We're coming up on 1 million maybe next month. That's crazy. To expand this a little bit, 107,000 people over the course of this period of time were injured somehow. This is, shot but not killed, beaten, burned, firebombed, blown up but not killed. 107,000 people got some version of serious injury from this particular period of time. But what is potentially the scariest thing that I don't think a lot of people really understand is when we say that there were a lot of bombings, it's hard to properly express this. There was an estimated 10,000 bombs that went off during this period of time. For 25 years, that's a bomb going off about every 14 hours. If there was a bombing in America at a public location every 14 hours for 25 years, we would not have civilization as we understand it today. It was crazy. Now, this is, of course, averaged out and spread out. It wasn't like every 14 hours a bomb was going off. But the number of bombs that were planted versus the amount of time, it's about averaging one about every 14 hours. Some of these were coordinated attacks where 50 bombs would go off in an hour across multiple cities, right? It's a crazy amount of attack. And many of these weren't planned ahead of time for like avoiding civilians. A lot of them were just, we're going to go blow this place up, and if you're there, you're dead. It's a messy period of time, and it's a really hard period of time to discuss, and I hope that in the process of this that I have done at least some justice to the topic. There is a lot of other stuff that I could talk about and that I wanted to talk about, but I try to be a good steward of the time that I have with you all, and I wanted to make sure that we covered everything from beginning to end. That being said, I'd be happy to take questions, but I'm kind of done with what I had prepped. Didn't we have lots more domestic bombings in like the 20s? I mean, there were more back then here, yes, but it wasn't to that level. Thank you, Anne. I appreciate that. All right, so anybody got any questions about this stuff? Or, if you want to, do you have any points that you would like to redeem? Otherwise, we might look around and see who we can go raid. So thanks everybody for contributing to the challenge here. We are about 93% of the way to Oops All Photos stream. Now we're 95% of the way there. 240,000 points. Good gracious, you all. That's a lots of points. One good or maybe worthwhile story worth looking into is the topic of Bobby Sands and the hunger strikes. Yeah, so one of the things that happened, especially with some of the people that were put in prison during the time, were these prisoners would go on hunger strikes. And several of them ended up dying from hunger strikes. And specifically, Bobby Sands was basically turned into a hero, and his funeral was this huge thing that was used as sort of part lament for the Irish state, part rallying cry for Irish independence, and it was a big to-do. There were thousands of people that showed up. They were classed as enemy combatants rather than citizens, stripping them of even more rights as prisoners. Man, that's crazy stuff. It's such a mess. There's so many small scale injustices that are horrible by themselves, and when you take them all into account, it's just almost impossible to kind of put all this stuff together. Always great to treat humans as less than humans. Yeah, you treat them as less than humans, and you don't have to treat them like humans. All right. It's a very, very, very tumultuous period of time. All right. Because I feel the need. Well, I don't know. I guess I don't feel the need. How do we request custom streams? That's one way, Late Bloomer. So there is there are two ways to do viewer request streams. One of them is to propose a topic during a vote and get it voted on, and the other is to buy one with streams or with stream points. So if you get 10,000 points, I will put you on the list, and we'll take one that way. Did Kyle do standard question book and I missed it? Kyle did standard question book and I missed it. So you can spend 10,000 points for your first one, or 20,000 points for subsequent ones, or you can suggest a topic, and when we do a voting thing, we'll vote on it. All right, so Kyle has asked for the standard question book and home study outlines. You're willing to sell your 68k stream points. I probably need to create additional ones that go up 10,000 points every time. Not trying to be rude to the people that hang around and hold on to the points. I try to make sure that everybody has a chance, right? I don't know. I feel weird about that one way or the other. So anyway, so this is the standard question book, and what it is, I have to do this little spiel every time. You used to be able to take college classes by mail, and you would mail in, and they would send you all of the materials, and then you would complete all of the work, and you would send it back, and then they would send you a test that you'd have to go get proctored on, and you'd do so-and-so and so-and-so. This was the study book for a history class, and you were supposed to know the answers to all of the questions in it. Here's the crazy thing. All I have is the question book. I don't have the study material. So what we do is we just find a random question in here, and then I see if I can answer it. And if I can't, we Google it. And usually end up on Wikipedia talking about some stuff. Let's go, I don't know, let's go like right in the middle. Like what's right in the middle? All right, so we kind of do this, and then we kind of just put like our finger down right here, and then I just kind of read the question. Oh, it's about Japan. Oh, we've done a whole stream on this one. What changes in the government followed the revolution of 1868? By what country was Japan opened to the world after several European countries failed in a similar attempt? This is like, you might think that I'm making this up, but that actually really is the question. So, the particular revolution that they're talking about is referred to as the Meiji Restoration. And what happened as a result to that is that the Tokugawa shogunate, which had been in power since, depending on when you want to date it, 1600 or 1632, should we try to answer it? Well, that's a great thing. Well, I mean, I guess I kind of gave it away, but if you have answers, yeah, put that in there. Yeah, see who was paying attention when we did that stream. There were two parts to the question. So one was, what changes in government followed the revolution of 1868? And the second part was, by what country was Japan opened to the world after several European countries had failed in a similar attempt? So here's what I'll do. Everybody type your answer in, but don't hit enter. So just type your answer in. And I'll say, by what country was Japan opened to the world after several European countries had failed in a similar attempt? Tom Cruise is not the correct answer, Moose. I apologize. He was very dreamy in that movie, though. So type your answer in, and I'm going to count to 3, and then everybody hit enter when I get to 3. All right? So what country opened Japan to the rest of the world for trade? Here we go. 1, 2, 3, enter. Crom 2s. Swahili. Swahili is not a country. All right, so we've got the USA from Gracchus. We've got Korea from Late Bloomer. We've got Portugal from Kyle. And we've got China from Late Bloomer. Batbird says Russia. Moose says England. Viper says America. And the crazy thing is, most of these answers are right, but not at this time period. It's not Laos. The first answer was a joke. Okay, cool. Swahili is a language spoken mostly in sub-Saharan Africa. So for 1868, the correct answer is America. Now, at various other points in time, a lot of those other countries did open Japan to trade. For example, the original migrations that brought contact from Asia to Japan were from Korea and then from China. So Korea and China both exposed Japan to new ideas through trade. So both of those answers are right, but not at this time period. Kyle also said Portugal, which is the correct answer if we're talking about the 1400s, specifically, the 1500s, specifically here talking about the trade between Portuguese arms sales people and Oda Nobunaga. So that is true for the 1580s. And Russia did start trade with Japan, but only after America opened them up. As soon as America opened Japan to trade, Russia was the second on board, then said, if you're trading with them, you also have to trade with us. England had worked out a sneaky workaround because Japan would trade with China sometimes, and England held part of China, and they used China as middlemen. Here we come to trade. America. So all of those answers are right at different times of history. But only the USA is correct in 1860, specifically by the Commodore Matthew Perry, who showed up with gunships on his way to China and blew up Japan until they agreed to trade with him, which is literally what happened. And if you're interested in that, we did a whole stream on the Meiji Restoration. I also really, really like Japanese history. It's kind of one of my things. Commodore Matthew Perry, indeed. Not the Commodore 64. That's one way to start trade. Yes, we will blow you up until you agree. Could he be more industrious? Matthew Perry, the actor? No, but you joke. One of the mods in the chat, Mac in a Lab Coat, has a great idea for a movie where Matthew Perry, the actor, plays Matthew Perry, the Commodore, in a movie about opening trade with Japan. So it's like Inception of Matthew Perry's. All right. Other requests or ideas? While I'm waiting for others, I will put in a plug. I am going to Turkey. I am going to Turkey from... I saw that question. Let me answer that after I answer this one. From May 17th to June the 1st. And if you would like to have some level of participation in that experience, I'm currently accepting donations to help partially fund the trip. And with the link that I just posted there in the chat, you can go to our Discord and you can see different tiers. I'm kind of running something that looks a little bit like a Kickstarter without using Kickstarter. And you can get some kind of neat redemptions. I've been working on building up the Discord if you're interested in that, or you can get some pictures from the trip every day as long as I have an email address from you. So if you're interested in participating on a sort of interesting level that you might not get if you can't travel to Turkey, here are a lot of places that I'm thinking about going to, so it's all kind of all over the place, right? But if you want to click that link, learn some more stuff, you can find the link to donate below me on the page, or if you want to just do straight PayPal stuff, you can hit it up that way. You don't have to if you don't want to, but if you feel so inclined and you want some more information and want to be more involved in that backstage kind of stuff and get some more information and some private streams that I'm going to be doing on Discord, you can do it. Turkish apple Fanta is amazing. I've had apple Fanta before and it is amazing. Master and Commander was really good. I really do like that movie. They're supposed to be making another one. I don't know if they're going to bring back the same cast. I don't know how they would do it though without that cast. Man, that cast was so good. Anyway, let us go do a raid, because it is time to do a raid. And I think that we're going to go visit one of our regular streamer friends who's a frequent person in the chat and has been a supporter of the stream. Vipers wanted to know what made me most emotional. Honestly, I think it was at the end where I was looking at the all of the numbers, all of the statistics of like how many children died and what kind of stuff happened and how many people got blown up and all that stuff. You know, you read about like this bomb went off and it killed 2 people, and this bomb went off and it killed 3 people and it injured 5 people. And you know, you're looking at a big list of these events, and to a certain extent, if you're looking at this spreading out over the 60s and through the 90s, it's almost desensitizing, because you look at timelines and it's like 5 days later this happens, and 4 days later this happens, and 3 days later this happens, and it's crazy. And when I got down...
I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus!
M. Robertson, thank you so much for that gift sub to our buddy Foggage. Much appreciated, my friend. Hope you're having a good one. So yeah, when I was sitting down and looking at the numbers, it really sort of all hit. And especially when I was looking at how frequently, when I was trying to do the math for like how frequently a bomb would go off. And I was thinking of what it must have been like to live in that scenario where, man, if you were living in Belfast, or if you were living in Derry, and those bombs were going off just like every day or every 2 days. What actually made me the saddest was, at what point would you kind of stop feeling it? Like, at what point would that become background noise? And that really hit me emotionally, because it had to have happened, right? Like, it had to have happened where people just became so used to this death and this violence that it just became background noise. And that to me is just so sad, and it's so crazy. And it just kind of hurts my soul. Anyway, it'll be called Perception. I just saw that. Suggestion for 100: the history of, an extremely high-level summary of everything you've talked about so far. Now you want an apple Fanta. It's really, really good. It's really good. Cherry Fanta is amazing as well. What donation method takes the least fees? PayPal. That's one of the reasons why I'm not using Kickstarter or Patreon. Not the same as Fanta. You don't know if they still make it. It came with these little personal bottles.
I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus!
Grow a forest. Welcome. Thank you so much for that sub. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're having a good day. Years ago, like a couple of decades since you've had it. Huh. I'll look around for it. I get that foreigners can be shocked by it, but to those living here, it's just reality. You get on with it. Yeah, see, that to me is just like, the bombs would often rattle the windows of your house. Man. You had a drinking buddy from Belfast. He said he was near 2 of the bombings and he hated it all. Yeah, kind of what happened from COVID. Yeah, I mean, that level of trauma eventually just has to, like, get to you, right? Around 3 miles from city center where most of the bombings were. Dang, Vipers, that's crazy, man. Oh, Foggage. Oh, thank you for paying that forward and regifting. That's great, man. Much appreciated. Holy crap, Michael, dude, what's up? How are you, my friend? It's good to see you. This is one of my former students from way back when I was teaching high school days. How's it going? How are you and all of the family and, you know, the brother and the sister, and how's it going, man? It's good to see you. Man, that brings me back. How's it going? How did you find me? Did you just like stumble in here and like, holy crap, that's Shane? I had a friend in here. Well, I don't want to say who it was out loud. I don't want to dox anybody. But there was another one of my students that you would know. That wasn't too far away from you. That was in chat the other day. Oh, David. David's just like throwing out my information everywhere. Oh, David. Just spreading the love of Shane and history all over the place. Do my students call me Shane or Mr. McInnes? Mr. McInnes. I would let Mr. Shane go. I'm one of those teachers that, like, honestly, it doesn't really matter as long as you're being respectful, right? Miss hearing me teach, and you found me on Twitch. You thought you'd pop by and listen, but everybody's doing great. You've got kids of your own now. Holy crap, man, that's crazy. You just got on Twitch and happened to come across one of my live videos. That's amazing. It's a small world, dude. Such a small world. Yeah, so I'm on every Thursday at 7, and usually like every other Tuesday. We do viewer request stuff. So this was a viewer request on the Troubles in Ireland. And if you really just want some more of that McKenna's teaching goodness, you can go to my page down here, and I've saved all of the past episodes. So there are like 54 more viewer requests that you can watch, and there's like 97 regular issues that you can watch. It's more hours than you probably want to spend listening to me run my mouth, because you've heard me run it enough, right? Mr. McShane, right? Mr. Smarty Pants. Better than Con McInnes. Dude, I don't know. Somebody wanted to call me Con. That'd be great. You were just texting with Emerson and Jesse who are lamenting the Star Wars RPG having to get backburnered. Yeah, I mean, I just wasn't feeling it. It was going to be a rough thing to do. We might try to resurrect that over the summer, but I'm not going to put any money on it. I live in a van down by the river. Mr. McInnes is the only thing you ever called him, but most definitely the only reason you're hooked on everything history and the smallest detail of things most people wouldn't know about. Yeah, that's right. That's right. You got to know the backstory to everything. You got to ask the stuff around the back side of it, right? You love when students find their old teachers again and vice versa. It's so cool and wholesome. Oh yeah, the puppy of war. Aw. Yeah. So yeah, man, Twitch is good. I like it. I hang out here a lot. I get to teach. I get to teach the history that I would have liked to have taught when I was teaching high school. It's good stuff. So I'm doing well. I'm teaching college now. I don't know if you've kept up with what's going on in my world, but I teach college now. I got another master's degree. I've got two now. I've got one in history and one in sociology. So I'm teaching mostly sociology stuff, but I get my history fix here on the Twitch. So it's good stuff. It's good times. It's really good to see you. I don't know if you have Discord. It's a social media platform. I don't know if you know what it is or not. But if you want to, I'm on there. I still have that old Facebook page from way back in the day, but I honestly couldn't tell you the last time I logged into it. I probably should just shut it down. But that's where I am most of the time. I have an Instagram and I have a Twitter, but I'm horrible at doing it. Or you can shoot me whispers here on Twitch if you want to. But it'd be good to hear about what's going on in your world. What is Cord? Discord? I don't know what that means. Anyway, we're going to go do a raid. Let's go do a raid. I've talked for a lot, and it's been a long day, and we've got a nice crowd. So let's go do a raid. We are going to go raid our good friend Nick Slottle, who is doing some art. Nick Slottle is a friend and supporter of the channel. He's a pretty cool streamer. Does amazingly cool art and really, really cute stuff, mostly digital, but also does some animation things and things of that nature. So come on by when we go hang out with Nick's. When we get there, our battle cry, as always, is adventure. And if you have those lovely adventure hat emotes, you can throw those in the chat with us. And yeah, I'll see everybody around the bend. So I hope you're having a good one. Next time you'll see me, Thursday is my 15-year anniversary, so I'm not going to stream on Thursday. I'll be back on Friday, though, and we'll talk about India and Central Asia. And it'll be a good time. But until then, take it easy.